Hey, everybody, you're listening to What Are You Doing in Denmark, the podcast that helps you make Denmark make sense. My name is Derek Hartman.
Hi, I'm Brooke Black.
Hi, I'm Conrad Molden.
And today we're really excited to talk to you about a fun topic that is very topical right now as we get into spooky season, and that is witches.
Spooky season. It's pretty blustery out, so it's time to get into the dark times.
Yes, the dark and occult that keep us warm inside during the autumn months. But we'll be talking about witchcraft and kind of the role that Denmark has played in all of the fun stories of witch hunting and witchcraft and black magic that we seem to know a lot about other countries and places that have experienced this from movies and Hollywood and things like that. But Denmark is no different. It has its own history with the occult and witchcraft. So
I want to caution the word fun.
Yeah, that's
fun
true.
Stories about torture and death. But
That's true.
But that's the very nature of it in general. As time goes on and we reflect on these sort of things, and feminism comes, further and then takes steps back and all of these things. So I'm interested to get into this.
Yeah, you're right. Fun was probably not a great descriptor.
But you see it in descriptions when it's like Sankt Hans is a fun way to, represent is this fun? I don't know.
We've sanitized what was really happening for these people. But
yeah.
So we go back in the history. Basically, we can look at witchcraft beliefs in Denmark like the rest of Europe. Basically, there was a belief in witchcraft that was widespread, and it went from the Middle Ages into the 17th century. And usually these were explanations for things that were happening that were out of the control of the everyday person. The things that they couldn't explain away, they would often turn to, it had to be something supernatural, magic, the occult. So this was, of course, without the scientific advances that we have today. And some people maybe still prefer to believe some of these things.
And what a scary place for people that don't know how anything works and is figuring it all out. So then this is how things like this happen, is putting blame somewhere else to try and make sense of things. And
exactly. And often that turned to witches. So witches were thought to be in league with the devil or using magic to do things like, say, harm crops or livestock or even people. And that's where we get the word hex or witch. So it often carries the association of both folk magic, diabolical pacts. Basically, people would accuse others of witchcraft, mostly women, often elderly, poor, or marginalized people, although men were not completely left out of this, and there was some legal framework for it. So Denmark would basically officially criminalize witchcraft in 1617 under King Christian IV's act. He had a Witchcraft Act that basically was a law that would lay out what was punishable and different types of magic. Of course, he separated white magic and black magic, which is interesting. White magic would be things like healing, charms, and if you did that or if you were found guilty of white magic, you were punished with banishment. So you were kicked out of the community, which...
healing makes you punished for banishment?
Apparently. So using any kind of non-approved means for healing or any kind of charms, anything for good luck, that kind of thing. I'm assuming this is to do with religion.
Yeah, for sure. And also I'm curious to know, it being so close connected to Germany and other parts of Europe, like when maybe was their influence from down south.
Yeah, absolutely. So just like a lot of the religion, of course, after the Reformation, that all came from Germany as well. But black magic was also basically anything that was sort of harmful sorcery, any kind of accusation that somebody had a pact with the devil, that was punishable by death. And usually that meant burning and being burned alive.
Okay, I see. Because I thought banishment could be terrible. And then I realized, yes, that's right. I was like, banish? How horrible for white magic? And then no, right. That's the other side of it, right?
How far were they banished, though?
Right.
Outside
like
of
the
25 kilometers onward? Like
Ranos.
Yeah. Right.
Oh.
You go to Ranos. That's the Ranos origin story.
That's just a bunch of witches. So before the law, witchcraft cases, they were basically handled locally. It would sort of be however the community itself wanted to handle it. So that's when you would have probably
local
banishment.
Municipality.
Exactly. It's handled at the communal level.
Yeah. Not unlike a lot of things today.
Yeah. You just had to, acknowledge it in your e-box.
17th century boa
Your
service.
E was for evil. The evil box. Worst joke. I'm sorry.
But yeah, so once you would approve that in your mid-ID, you would be given...
whoa. NEMID. The olden days.
Oh, the old ones,
days.
yes. It was just on a card, which all probably would feel like black magic today. But they had these witch trials. This was basically the most intense period of persecution during the 1500s to the mid-1600s. Thousands were accused, and it's estimated that over 1,000 people were executed in Denmark, and then also the territories that were under Danish rule, because we know those borders have changed.
Yeah, I had to look into who had harmed the most witches among the Nordic countries, and I'll get into that a little bit later.
But trials, again, were usually sort of local disputes. So maybe somebody's cow dies, and then to explain it away, they blame somebody else in the community. Maybe somebody they have some kind of vendetta against, but that would be a typical thing that would maybe lead to one of these accusations. But it could be even just something very natural, like storms that were lost at sea, or illness strikes your neighbor. They may just accuse somebody of witchcraft. And Christian IV, he was very pious. So he was a Lutheran king. He was very influenced by Protestant orthodoxy. He saw himself as sort of the defender of the true faith, and witch hunting was his way to enforce and show moral authority over Denmark. Of course, he probably had some political motives as well. So Christian IV, of course, he was known as Christian the Builder. He built a lot of things, but also drove Denmark into a lot of debt.
Yeah,
lost a few wars, and also had some reason to perhaps dust up other potential enemies as he's losing wars and driving Denmark into debt from all of his building projects. He built Rosenborg Castle. He expanded Copenhagen and
Rundetorn, all the fancy, famous ones.
He rebuilt Kronborg Slot.
Yeah.
Klussenborg Canal. Yeah. So Borsen, he brought in people from, brought in Dutch engineers to, add canals around the city and reclaim land and things like that. So all of this was expensive, and he needed to scapegoat some people.
Yeah. Population to control, and it's always somehow women.
And Jews.
Great.
Don't forget, yeah. So that was basically his scapegoats to deflect the unrest, the financial disarray, and then sort of reinforce his own divine legitimacy over the Danish people. And that led, of course, to some very famous witch trials and some studies and some cases of witchcraft. And Brooke, you brought us some of those stories?
Yes, and I feel like you have a tie to the first one. Maybe you want to share the Ku, sorry for the pronunciation, but the Ku Huskers trials. So Ku, very bustling market town south of Copenhagen. It was right after this law that Christian IV put in. Huskers means house cross, meaning a haunted or cursed house. So basically, the mayor's wife, Anna Pallas, began reporting strange disturbances in her home. There were items flying around in the house, banging noises, sudden illnesses. The town believed evil spirits had infested the home, and they blamed witches. Then it escalated. A servant girl, 12-year-old Karen Rhodes, fell ill and accused local women of bewitching her. There's a lot of child accusation that comes into witch trials as well that I have found, where that's an interesting layer to this all, is, that adds a lot of complication. Her fits, this 12-year-old, became the center of attention. She named more and more witches. Panic was starting to spread. Soon, people believed there was a coven of women in Ku which were behind the haunting. So then the trials took place over 3 years, 1612 to 1615. Over 15 women were accused and executed. Typical charges were sending sickness into homes, making pacts with the devil, riding on animals at night to Sabbaths, which sounds pretty exciting. Because that was always, they were riding cats or goats or brooms. Like, I feel like you don't ever see in modern depictions the goat or cat riding as much as you see the brooms. But that would be more fun.
If somebody was really doing that, why would you punish them? I mean, if they found a way to, a more efficient way to get around, if riding a cat was really possible.
And they tortured them, these women, and they got confessions because, so they were burned at the stake, these 15 women, which is wonderful. But this shows...
So they weren't confessing voluntarily.
Who knows? So, when you're under torture, so it's a real Sophie's choice of what happens. But this shows how child accusers and fear of invisible forces can start a mass panic. So that trickles down from everything Christian IV put in. So that's an early example of a witch panic in Denmark before Maren Splill Splid. It's kind of like the Salem witch trials. Like, I don't know how many people outside of the U.S. know the Salem witch trials. Do you know it? No. See, it's such a huge part of U.S. lore, but it's even confusing in history.
And that's interesting because that happened, I think, like about a century after there were a lot of witch trials in Europe. But I think part of the reason is because
they were trying to control a population.
Exactly.
And trying to enforce Puritanism at that point. Yeah. Because I lived in Massachusetts and I've been to that town, which is a very like touristy, witchy. Have you been to Salem?
No, I haven't. Yeah. But I know that they really kind of try to capitalize on.
There's like the torture museum, like they've made it like a real, but it's one of the biggest historical things people always talk about. Maybe because also Americans love Halloween so much anyway. So it was kind of like if you don't know the Salem witch trials because you're not American, then it was similar to this in Europe. And then the possible question of were men accused too, which we talked about. They weren't really. In Coup, nearly all were women. Which, not surprising. So that's the first one. But didn't you go to there was a house in Coup that was like the origin point of all of this?
Yeah. So I did go to like sort of check it out and see what it was. They don't have a huge exhibit or monument or anything to it, but they do have a plaque. I
love
also
a plaque.
went when things were a little bit COVID-y, so getting inside wasn't as possible. But yeah, it's right on the main squares is where this house was that was said to be haunted and all these disturbances happening.
Oh, I got to go there.
The house is not there anymore?
I believe the house is there and it's there's a plaque, but I don't know. Because again, I think I was there in 2021, so it wasn't. They weren't bringing people into.
It's interesting.
Indoors.
I guess somebody's living there now.
I think it.
Ghost Hunters is doing an episode.
I think it's the former mayor's house or something like that. So I think it is.
Right, because it was the mayor's wife.
I think it's somehow like a protected building or a government building or something. Anyway, so I don't think it was like a private residence at this point.
When you lived in Aarhus, I don't know why I said it like Aarhus, because I lived outside of Aarhus and I was trying to figure out the witch history there, and I would sometimes find a snippet of it in like a guidebook, but I wouldn't really understand. I don't know if this probably has not been on your radar, Conrad, but I was trying to figure out where, because I saw it mentioned in like a guidebook to Aarhus, and then but I have some more cases, and the next one is from Ribe, which if you know Ribe at all, there's a hex museum, there's a witch museum there. It's one of the is it the oldest?
It's the oldest
city
in Denmark,
or the oldest like Viking marketplace, because Aarhus, like Aarhus, is also very old. I don't want to get my facts.
Capital, I know that.
You're right. Okay, right. It's still my dream to go. But anyway, prosperous old town, strong guild system. There was a rivalry between craftspeople because, like I said, it was a marketplace. So Maren Splid. That's a really tough word for me to say. So she was married to a successful tailor, Jens. Wealthy, outspoken, not submissive, traits that made enemies. So the accusation, rival tailor Loris Björn accused Maren of bewitching him and claimed that after a quarrel, she blew on him and he became violently ill. Was this like or was it?
I mean, I don't think you should go around coughing or blowing on people, especially in
2021.
It's 2021, or but even in the 1500s.
This is so typical. Local court initially dismissed the case, but Loris appealed all the way to the king.
Wow.
Christian IV intervened and personally pushed the case forward, suggesting political, theological motives. This is actually very freaking me out with like the present day of like how life is at the moment.
It's like, go be the king. Like go do go.
Yeah, but he came in and said witch hunting is part of my duty. I have to uphold faith, and he ordered Maren's case retried.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know. Okay, so the trial. Maren maintained her innocence throughout. Confessions of other alleged witches were used against her, and one even claimed to have seen her at a witch's Sabbath. Go figure.
What were you doing at this witch's Sabbath, though?
Did you ride a cat over there?
Yeah.
I saw you. Under torture, Maren supposedly confessed to sorcery, but her statements were contradictory because, when you're put in this situation. So she was executed in 1641 by burning at the stake in Ribe. Her husband, Jens, stayed by her side until the end, protesting her innocence. This friggin' Loris, whatever his name is, rude. So that was the most famous Danish witch trial, remembered as a miscarriage of justice.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
But I think they honor it, right?
Yeah, there's a witch memorial for Maren in Ribe, which I really want to go see. But it
You
just
can ride
shows
your
how
cat
personal. Yeah,
there.
I would take Nacho. We'll ride Nacho there. But it just shows how personal rivalries can escalate a situation. And then the king's role in pushing witch trials, which is, it was a perfect like PR opportunity for him to come in.
Yeah, change the narrative. It's like, somebody in charge, things aren't going well, and they just want to change the narrative, have people talking about a different story and
this is
pointing the finger at somebody else.
Yeah, and this is also
and
like
making sure their Epstein files aren't released, things like that.
Yeah. It's like, oh, there's a time of political weakness. We're going to show like, after our defeat in the 30 Years' War, like, witchcraft. And this comes up again later on when I talk about Sanctens, and I'll explain that. But the third one is the execution of Anna Clemens in 1693 in Rugård. Sorry about that. By the late 1600s, witch trials were starting to die down, at least in Denmark, where in some other countries they were starting to ramp up. There was skepticism of supernatural evidence. I mean, people were getting a little bit like, okay, some local communities, especially rural ones, still clung to witch beliefs. Of course, the things kind of progress at different paces. But so the accusation was Anna was an older woman in Rugård, which is on Djursland. She was accused of causing misfortunes, cattle sickness, the usual, neighbors falling ill. She was considered strange and quarrelsome and difficult, a typical scapegoat. So in the trial, the local court condemned her as a witch. Appeals went upward, but unlike Marin's case, there was less royal enthusiasm to stop it and little pushback from higher authorities. So in 1693, she was still executed by burning, and the last legally sanctioned execution for witchcraft in Denmark. So this basically marks the end of the witch hunt era because people were kind of over it, I guess, over the cause. Who knows what else people had moved on to.
I know all the deaths are tragedies, but it must suck so bad to be the last
Yeah.
one. Imagine
It's
they
like,
kill her and then like, that was a mistake. Like, they were all a mistake.
Right.
We've been doing this for a long time now.
Also, that seems like there must be so much pressure to keep your cows healthy.
Yeah.
Because
of course.
Sneeze or cough on
not
anyone.
sneeze or cough for anybody.
Wait, did you blow on me? No.
No.
I was blowing this leaf off of your own shoulder.
No,
Yeah.
there was a bee on you.
So intellectuals were like, okay, we don't really buy this anymore. But of course, the superstition kind of continued in rural communities. So, kind of where does this all sit now? I actually went to, there's a witch market put on by the Copenhagen Occult Club. So there is modern day witchery in Denmark. There is actually so there's no burnings anymore, but I've jumped quickly to the modern day witch times. But at Den Sorte Diamant, there's a really cool exhibit that me and Mike went to called Mellem Himmel og Jord, between heaven and earth. And it's all about the occult in Denmark. And there's a lot of really cool grimoires. And what you see is the only registered witch in Denmark is Danny Druhild. She died in 2021. She was born in the 70s. She lived in a magical forest called Roldskov, which I've been wanting to go to. It's in northern Jutland. But she was like... She fought for the environment. She actually, in this exhibit, they've set up her entire kind of witch, I don't know if you call it a stew, like a living room, where they've recreated her, like what it was like to be in her witchery room. And then they tell you about her in the exhibit.
And it's in the Black Diamond?
It's in the Black Diamond. It's there until December. So I would recommend going to see it if you're remotely interested in kind of the history of witchcraft in Denmark. And that's also where I learned that for Sanctens, when you burn the witch, I thought this was a centuries-old tradition. It's only 150 years old. It's a relatively new tradition to burn the witch because the bonfires have been around forever. But but I'll hold on. I did like a little research back here. So right, today it's symbolic and festive, but it's been around for centuries to ward off evil spirits, protect livestock, as we know, bring fertility to the land. But it kind of came into fashion to burn witches, especially after the 1920s, because Danes were rediscovering folk traditions as part of building a national identity after losing territory. So it's another kind of war thing again. They lost Schleswig to Prussia in 1864. And so this kind of adding the witch gave like a more folkloric, like, this is our traditions, like reclaiming some of our identity, even though it was kind of borrowed from other places. And also the Grimm fairy tales books were out at this point, kind of making witches evil. So people have been reading those.
And there was a tie to there is a tie to Germany, right? That's
Yep.
the mountain that we're sending
Yes.
the witches back
Yeah.
to.
So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you ask a Dane, why are we burning a witch? To send them back to Bloksbjerg,
Okay.
which is a mountain region in the Harz region of Germany, like the Harz mountain range. So I was like, why Bloksbjerg? And if you ask a Dane, I bet you they don't know why it's Bloksbjerg either. But it was where it was believed that witches gathered, and it was in all throughout literature and romantic folklore in the 1800s. So it kind of comes from that point in time where, like, maybe they've lost the reason why they're going to Bloksbjerg. They just know that they're going there. So they kind of all gathered there. But yeah, so I mean, it still lives on. Dani was, she's a really interesting character. I recommend going to that exhibit to learn more about her, and also like, I would love to. I think maybe should we take a fam trip to Roldsko to like do some magic?
Yeah, how is it a magical farce? That's what
there's trolls and like all kinds of lore and history in this forest, and she lived in the forest. She was very close to nature, and she wrote several books on the subject. And so yeah, I think we need a Roldsko expert to tell us exactly all the lore. That could be a separate episode, I think, because
there's not one here.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably some magical forests close by. We just, that's the one I've always heard about, and I always wanted to go there. There is actually one in northern Zeeland. There's like a place where, have you seen the statues with like the mystic creatures with like, they have no face?
Oh, yeah.
They're like standing in a circle. Yeah. It's kind of by Drausholm Slot, speaking of spooky places.
Oh, yes.
Which is the most haunted castle in Europe, which I stayed at on Halloween night a few years ago, thinking it would be packed because everyone would be doing the same, and it was empty. So that's great and I know that Halloween
is the headless chariot rider, isn't it? Or was he? No, he's got riding a carriage, isn't it?
At Drausholm Slot?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
There's the gray lady, the white lady,
Yeah.
and there's the there is somebody who rides a carriage through.
Yeah, maybe they do have a head.
We have an episode on the ghosts of Dragstrom Slot.
Oh,
so
you do?
We'll put that in the show notes in the description.
Maybe, I mean, I did not sleep at all, and it was incredible and moody, and I recommend that part of, visiting Denmark around that time of year. There were so many pheasants in the forest making crazy noises, and it's all very mystical and magical if you're into that.
I think the guy who is the ghost that rides across the courtyard, he was jailed there and died there, or he was jailed there for a long period of time, and he was he was married to Mary, Queen of Scots, and they tried to solicit help from Denmark, Norway, in like usurping, I think. This was during sort of like the Catholic Protestant wars in either Scotland and England. I don't exactly remember the history right now, but he was jailed and like murdered there, and I think the Bishop of Roskilde, when the Protestant Reformation happened, was jailed there. Oh, so there's quite a few ghosts like in general in that
I love it.
castle.
I love it. And then I did promise I would talk about some men that were witches or accused of witchcraft. And when I was looking up the how the Nordic countries stacked up to who burned the most witches, I guess Denmark wins for that because of Christian IV and his agenda. So Denmark executed about 1,000 over time that we know of. Norway and Sweden were well behind with only 300, but they caught up later, like maybe 50 to 100 years later.
That's still so many people.
Yeah.
For something that isn't real.
Finland was 100, and then Iceland 20, and we're mostly men.
Wow.
That was like, women's lib. It's like Iceland's like one of the first, like equal opportunists. Like
that makes sense.
Man. But yeah, we don't. I don't think we know why. I could do more extensive research if anybody knows. If anyone from Iceland wants to tell us. But yeah, also the rest of Europe was much worse. They, in terms of the amount of people. Not that it's a contest, but it's Denmark won that one.
But per capita, did they have?
Denmark
that's
true.
That
is true.
Right?
That is very true. So yeah, so that's the timeline of witchcraft in Denmark. If anybody has interesting stories or we got anything wrong, please let us know. Our speak pipe is open. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
I'd still just find it fascinating that the witch trials can happen and people can kind of come to their senses that it's all, psychological and that it's a blame game, and then sort of just somehow move on from that, because I feel like that's a very big error to make as a society. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, hey, should we have a chat about what's happened?
But it happens in the modern day, right? The modern day witch hunt, and like, why do some people get canceled and others don't? And why, like
Anybody really gets canceled?
maybe. You think so? We just
don't
don't. We
know.
don't hear from them. The
I feel like
canceled
people
ones.
I feel like
They've been canceled.
I feel like we say people get canceled and then they get like
new TV
they
show.
get just a TV show on a different network.
Mostly. Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, but he probably should be. I don't.
But
feel
he
that
wasn't
bad.
cancelled for his political for his speech.
Maybe that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Like he did something sexual and illegal.
Yeah.
That's a crime.
I feel like that's.
Versus like being cancelled for speaking out about your
For
beliefs.
breathing on the tailor's.
breathing on the-
Exactly. When a rival tailor down the road is like, I see an opportunity.
Unfair. But yeah, I mean, I think it's still it's just that's a heavier like psychological topic of like, why do we have this common belief system that everyone shares, and then some people are like it's like a trend almost. It moves on. Oh, like we're over this now. We're not wearing Crocs anymore. Like we're not killing.
It's also so
innocent
interesting
women.
that it can manifest that there's no evidence for witchcraft, not in like a kind of substantive effect. There's only like accusations and rumors, and yet it can be so widespread in society that people can blame people in other parts of Denmark. You know,
And it's just so like when the king gets involved, like come on, or when the president gets involved. Or,
But it's also funny, I think, in like to think of Denmark having that history, especially a country, a culture, a society that is, I think, rather open-minded, very live and let live in these aspects, and would not. Oh, I think a lot of things go. I mean, you can just walk around on a Saturday night and see a lot of things go. So to think that there was a period of time where we went to really just seek out and punish and be very
but so many things were put into place probably only in the past. Like Danish design was something that came around in like the 1950s or maybe a little bit earlier. But all these things that we come to this country and we think have been here forever are like it's like the Sanctans witch. Like I don't know any better. So like I thought you've been doing this since the 1200s. And so that's a part of navigating life in a new country is you just have things in place. You think they've been there forever, and then we learn as we stay here longer how like when and where these things were put in. It's fascinating.
There wasn't a Thomas Polson lamp above the
Louis Polson, you
Louis
mean?
Polson, yeah, there wasn't a Louis Polson lamp above
the other Polson who got breathed on.
That's the yes.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
it's interesting when we talk about ideas around witchcraft in the modern age that we like generally as a society have been like, okay, witches don't exist, like these women were accused of these things and they didn't do them. However, I had a friend who was living on Amager in an apartment, and the person was moving out because they said it was haunted. And what was so interesting is the real estate value was lower than all the other apartments in the building.
Really?
Even though there was nothing substantive to prove that it was haunted. And what's interesting, my friend is into all of that stuff, and she bought it because she needed a cheaper place to live with her family. But she recognized that it was haunted, and when she moved in, she said she had a ceremony where they made peace with the ghost.
Great.
And did this ritual type thing. I thought it was really interesting that somebody could move in, because if you didn't believe in any of it, I feel like it would, if you could, I don't know if I could move and live in a place where I had multiple people had said that it was haunted.
It's a very mature way to deal with a spirit.
Yeah, they
It's
said they got
like,
along really well.
Yeah,
And
let's
that's-
have like I mean, I believe that my family, my Italian grandmother had a lot of superstitions, and like that's a whole other part of witchcraft, like is Italian witchcraft and things like that, like and wherever people are from. But I don't believe that I have a gift of any, like, I can definitely feel certain things, but my other family members are way more in tune with that kind of stuff, where I feel like I would like to do what your friend did and have a ceremony where I made peace with a ghost, but I don't think I have the gift of that. I just want it from the outside. So I have like my crystals and all of my spiritual stuff, but I think that's really, if you believe, then that's really
Have you ever
interesting.
had any experiences?
Only at Drausholm Slot was I feeling, really like a nervous energy and just the eeriness. But maybe, who knows? Like could be brought on by anticipation or something like that. But I believe in all of that stuff.
I had one thing that could easily be explained away. I lived in an older house when I was in university, and I was everybody in the house. We had like an event for my fraternity was on the first floor of the house. I went upstairs and I was in a bathroom and I had to like write a note, and I was writing the note, and then all of a sudden the light went out, but only in the bathroom. It didn't go out in the whole house. That was strange. And then I reached for the light switch, and I waited maybe 2 minutes. It was an older house. I thought it may have been something with the electricity. When I reached for the light switch, the lights went back on. And then I thought, okay,
you reached
that
it,
was
but
nothing.
didn't touch it.
I didn't touch
Yeah.
it. I didn't touch it. So then I continued writing the note that I was writing, and the lights went out again. So I thought, okay, well, it was approximately 9 seconds last time. So I waited 9 seconds, and then probably 12, maybe 14 seconds. And then I reached for the light switch again. And when I reached for it, it went back on. And I was like, that's weird. Again, just thinking, it's an old house. It's just the circuit. It's whatever. I started writing again, and the lights went out, and I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. I don't know what this is. Yeah, and people always said that they would hear when they were home alone, for example, like there weren't many people that lived there full time. I think it may have only been like 5 guys that lived there full time, and they would say, yes, in the summer. When they were the only people in the house, that they would hear footsteps downstairs and then go downstairs because they thought somebody would drop by. It's like university. People do just drop by or whatever, and nobody would be there. And then they would hear footsteps upstairs and know that they were the only person that was in the house. And then they would go back upstairs and be like, what the hell? And there was nobody upstairs either.
Wow.
So just like strange things like that. It was an older town for the United States. Like it was just, it was a weird energy.
I did actually, you just reminded me that I was on a Southwest road trip in the U.S. with my 2 girlfriends, and we stayed in a haunted, like, Southern hotel, and a woman had died in the room we were staying in, an old woman, and I was taking a shower, and I didn't lock the door or it was just closed, and when I tried to get out of the shower, I was locked in. I was like, very funny guys, like, trying to scare me, and I couldn't open the door, and when I finally, got it open, they were on the other side of the room. Like, I couldn't get out. So, I mean, it could be humidity sealing the door shut, or the lady, and that was actually a really scary moment where I was like, okay, that's actually something that feels different. Did you ever have anything, Conrad?
No, I actually haven't. My sister, she's into that kind of stuff, and she lived in a house when she was at university, and she was convinced that there was a ghost that lived in. She used to talk about seeing it all the time and walking around. And apparently it was an old house that had been haunted before, but she was very at peace with it.
You know the Conjuring movies?
Yeah.
So the 4th one just came out. My friend is from the town in Connecticut where those ghost hunters were from. He had gone to some of their talks, like the paranormal experts, and he remembers an old town store where the cash register flew across the room and stuff like that. And having visited that hometown, I never got to meet them because they died, I think, before. The dad died in the 70s, but the mom was still giving paranormal talks. I would have loved to have gone to one, but they were laughed at for so long. And I know we got on the topic of spirits and ghosts, but it's kind of, we are in spooky season now, so I believe in the energy, and I believe it's out there, you know. So.
And if you do too, and you have some stories you want to share with us, or if you know some stories,
that would be fun.
Yeah, please reach out to us.
We can hold flashlights up and do it in the dark.
Yeah, if you like this kind of episode, let us know if you want more. And if you have your own story to share, somebody we should talk to, a psychic, a medium, somebody with some cool stories, or a haunted place, or a drag show slot, or somewhere like that, definitely be in touch. And thanks for listening and watching, everybody. Hi.